We're well into free agency now, Rube, and we're starting to see a little bit of theme in what the Eagles are doing this offseason. Two new signings, Josh Uche and Harrison Bryant, two kind of bargain bin players.
Yeah, the pattern is they're losing really good players and signing not so good players. But
yeah, it's kind of the situation they're in right now. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. At least the Eagles are signing someone. We have stuff to talk about, and that's fun.
Yeah, and all their acquisitions kind of fall into the same category. Guys who at one point were, some of them were pretty high draft picks. Some of them had pretty good seasons earlier in their career, maybe bounced around, didn't find the right situation. A couple had injuries that set them back. But they're all guys that at one point were seen as legitimate prospects, mid-round picks, a couple high picks. So Howie has accumulated 5 of these guys, 3 as free agents, low-level free agents that aren't going to affect the comp pick formula. He wouldn't do that. And then a couple trade acquisitions. So they're all in that category. They're all guys who have a little potential. They're all, I don't want to say long shots to make the roster, but they're in that category. They're going to have a chance to compete. There's nothing promised to any of them. And if they don't work out, if none of them work out, there's no downside. They don't have any cap implications or dead money or anything like that. So they're bargain basement guys. They could help. If they don't, it doesn't really hurt you.
Yeah, so just to recap, the two players the Eagles have acquired in trades, Kenyon Green from the Houston Texans, Dorian Thompson-Robinson from the Cleveland Browns. They sign A.J. Dillon from the Green Bay Packers. Then they get Josh Uche and Harrison Bryant on Thursday. Those are the two new signings. We can get into those guys specifically, but I do like the idea that we just kind of start in broad terms because these guys are not the answers to fill the voids left by players leaving. These are just like supplemental guys who are going to compete at their respective position groups, and they might help you. They might not.
Yeah, and honestly, they're more likely to not. But if you hit on one of them, it's worth it. And I think Howie's pretty good at finding value where others don't see it, or certain guys kind of lose their value, and maybe Howie sees something that the guy did a couple of years ago. We can get him back to that level. You like the coaching staff that you have here. I think they're very good at taking kind of reclamation projects and helping them get back to where they were. We saw that this past year. Look, their situation, they're not going to go after any big time free agents. Most of those guys are signed anyway, but you got to fill up the roster. You got to have enough guys in training camp. And when you lose guys, you got to add guys. And that's what he's been doing. And, every one of these guys has a chance. There's none of these guys who are, complete, like no shot at all. They all have a chance to win a roster spot, to earn a roster spot in camp. Maybe none of them do, but maybe one does, maybe two does, and you're a better team.
Of these 5 guys they've brought in, anyone particularly pique your interest?
I would say A.J. Dillon. When he was, when he was healthy, I mean, he was a pretty good running back and had a couple really good years not that long ago. Look, a neck injury for a running back it's not ideal, and he had a couple of them. So, we'll have to see what he looks like in camp, and if he even makes it that far. Odds are 1 or 2 of these guys probably wouldn't even make it to August. That's just the reality. But he's the one guy. You lose Gainwell, you get a guy who's kind of similar in some ways, different kind of runner, but similar stats. I guess good blocker, good receiver, decent receiver.
Dillon has him by a few pounds, I think.
Yeah, probably by about 40. But he's an interesting guy to me because I think he has a chance to help this team.
For me, it's Josh Uche. And this is a good segue because we haven't talked about Uche. We talked about A.J. Dillon on the last pod. Uche is definitely intriguing to me. 26 years old, 5-year NFL vet. He was a second-round pick back in 2020. Mostly played for the Patriots. Got traded midway through last year, goes to the Chiefs, and just never really fit in there in the Steve Spagnuolo's defense. He barely played He ended up playing a lot in that regular season finale. The Chiefs didn't need that one either, but inactive for the whole playoff run, was inactive for Super Bowl 59. But this is a guy that has had some production in his career. Most of it came in 2022, but I don't know, an 11 and a half sack season isn't nothing.
Yeah, in 2022 with the Patriots, 11 and a half sacks, 14 quarterback hits, 9 tackles for loss. So, those are good. And 2 forced fumbles. That's a pretty good season right there. If you're guaranteed that he was going to have that kind of season in 2025, Howie couldn't afford him, right? So this is the kind of guy you have to, but that wasn't that long ago. He, like you said, he's a young guy. And sometimes with these kind of guys, it's just a matter of finding the right situation and having a coach that understands what your strengths are and how to get that out of you. Look, I don't know if Jeremiah Washburn and Vic can do that, but this is a guy who's got a pretty good season on his resume just a couple years ago.
Yeah, and obviously since then, I mean, it's an outlier season for him. You look at his rookie year, 1 sack. Every other year, 3 sacks or fewer. But, I mean, in 2023, the Eagles got a chance to see him up close in that first game of the season. He had a nice game. I went back and watched it today. He had a sack in that game, and it wasn't like a great pass rush sack, but it was like a hustle sack. He made it happen. He got the Jalen for it. Was a 0-yard loss, but or a 0-yard gain if you want to be optimistic or pessimistic about it, but it was a nice hustle play. And then he had a really nice pass rush move on Lane Johnson. So that was one instance where the Eagles saw him. And then just in the summer, they were up at Foxborough for the joint practice. And that day, Matt Judon was really getting after them. He was causing problems, but Uche on the other side did some good things too. He was really active. He even got in like a little scuffle that day. Remember that those two teams were really kind of going back and forth. He was involved in that. So, a player that they've only seen once in a regular season game, but that they probably know a little bit better.
Yeah, that's the first thing that struck me. And I think it was only one practice up there in Foxborough, right? Last summer, but
yeah, just one.
It's a really good way to see a player and, kind of learn about his practice habits and see him in a different situation than just watching film. It's unusual to have that luxury. You don't get tape of joint practices. Like they're not shared with other teams for competitive advantage purposes, to use Nick's favorite phrase. But you get a couple hours watching the guy, and I'm sure coaches take notes on those type of things. So that's an interesting little window into what he can do. And when a guy's played 5 years now, I think he's been in the league.
Yeah, 5 years
and had 1+ year. You wonder about it, but there is that year. And, most of the time these guys can't, they never get back to that point, but it's in there somewhere. He's done it before. And, like you said, he's a young guy. He's just 26. So maybe they can get something out of him. Certainly a position where even if he can just contribute a little bit and get some pressure and get a few sacks, it'd be a big plus considering the state of their edges right now.
Yeah, there's opportunity there. And look, it's not a home run that he'll be good. I mean, heck, last year the Eagles had Julian Okwara and Terrell Lewis in camp, right? And 2 veterans who had some success in the NFL, and they didn't pan out at all. So I think those names are important to remember when we're talking about these guys, because like the likelihood, like you mentioned, that they work out isn't great, but there's something there. And edge rusher is a position where we'll see what they add in the draft. I think that's a position you and I have talked about. First round makes a lot of sense. Second round will make sense. So they might add more talent there, but they lost Josh Sweat. You bring back Nolan Smith. You bring back Jalix Hunt. No one really knows what they're going to get out of Bryce Huff. Brandon Graham, we're waiting to hear about his future and if there is one as a player in the NFL. So, and it's a rotational position, so it's if he can make the roster, he has a chance to play a little bit.
Out of all these guys, who do you think is most likely to make the 53?
Most likely to make the 53 is AJ Dillon. just because like they don't really have the numbers there right now. Uh, they're going to keep more than two running backs. I think it's probably unlikely they draft one in back-to-back years. So we're talking Saquon, Will Shipley, and then someone. And I don't think it's going to be Ty Davis Price. I don't think it's going to be Lou Nichols. Sorry to the Lou Nichols fans out there.
There's a lot of them.
A lot of them. I like Lou Nichols, but I think he's right now. I would put him as the most likely to make the 53.
Yeah, I don't think I would disagree with that. Yeah, I mean DTR maybe just because he's a
They're going to keep
quarterback.
three quarterbacks. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? You said the five guys. I was thinking about the free agent signings. I mean, I think Kenyon Green's going to be here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a lock.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But it's really interesting to see the pattern evolving, and built into the trades are how he got picks back. Gave up a 6 for 5 and got a 5, which is so it's all part of the plan. Buy cheap, stock up on picks, and he's sticking to it.
Harrison Bryant, 26-year-old tight end, big guy, 6'5", 230. I think does offer you a little bit as a blocker. I don't think he's a purely pass catching tight end. So you can kind of see where he would fit into the mix here. Now, the Dallas Goedert situation is up in the air a little bit, unresolved. He has no guaranteed money left. It seems like something is going to happen there. We don't know exactly what. I don't think Harrison Bryant is like the replacement for Dallas Goedert, but he will bolster the depth of tight end a little bit.
Yeah, and Calcaterra is a better receiver, and he's a better blocker. So we'll see how that plays out. They seem to like Grant Calcaterra. I don't think either of them is going to be a one. Now, he started some games, started a lot of games in his career, Harrison Bryant, but the receiving numbers, his first few years, he caught some balls between 20 and 30 catches each year. He actually led BCS in catches and yards his last year at Florida Atlantic, which I believe was 2019. But the last couple of years, those receiving numbers have gone way down. He was in with the Raiders last year, and I only caught 8 passes all year, so that just didn't work out. But he's caught.
Well, like they signed him, and then they drafted Brock Bowers. So
they drafted Brock Bowers.
What do you think that's like for Harrison Bryant? Like you sign to a team, and you're watching the draft, and they draft the best tight end in the draft.
Yeah, who caught like 112 passes or something.
He already had Mayer in front of him too.
Yeah. So he didn't play much, and not a perfect situation. So, we'll see. And he's like all these other guys. You bring him into camp and see what he can do. These guys are all veteran guys who've played a lot in the league. Well, most of are, and will probably do some good things in camp just because, those are guys like if they're playing with the threes, they're going to be going up against rookies and, maybe some undrafted guys. So they're all going to have opportunities to look pretty good in practice.
I thought that last year about Julian Okwara.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, that's the case. It's not always, but he's that whole tight end picture is kind of hazy just because we don't know what's going to happen with Goddard, and we don't know what they're going to do in the draft, and so it's tough to really speculate like about what his role is going to be without knowing the answer to those two questions.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's just the way the NFL does it. They have free agency before the draft, which I do like because it gets veterans some money, or at least gets them to places first. But other leagues do it differently, right? Like there are reasons why you would have the draft first. And then like right now, imagine I think the talk around the Eagles will be way different. Like right now, there's a little bit of panic I sense from the fan base because it has been a quiet offseason. Imagine if the offseason was flipped though, and you had the draft first and then free agency. I think it would be a little different if they had at least like a fun draft or a draft that people agreed with.
Yeah, because they will be picking where they're supposed to. Like they don't have to get rid of all their picks. Like it's not like free agency is going to continue into the draft. It was interesting. You mentioned yesterday on our pod that I did that Eagles town hall over at McGurk's in Royersford. I'm sorry, Royersford, and they did a poll where their poll of the day was just simply, are you disappointed in the Eagles offseason so far, or do you understand it and are you okay with it? And it was like 76% were good with it. They understand the situation. You know, for 76% of people to be okay with losing Milton Williams and Sweat and, you know, Isaiah Rodgers and Slay and so on, that surprised me. So I think people, I'm sure a lot of people are disappointed, but I think people understand that this is how it had to be, and it's part of the price for winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think it becomes a lot easier to swallow after you win it, right? Like if they lose that game, then all of a sudden this is seeming like a disaster. Your chance to get back is gone.
I was going to ask you this at some point, but like, let's say Milton and Sweat didn't have the Super Bowls they had. Let's say neither had a sack and Eagles lost. How much lower would their value have been? Like how much less would they have gotten? Because I think it might be significant.
Yeah, that's hard. You've said that a bunch, and I don't know if I totally agree with all that. I think it helps. Like there's no doubt that you have a Super Bowl like that, it helps. I don't know if it massively changes the number. And there's no way to really know that.
Yeah, I don't know massively. I wouldn't say massively, but I think it's significant.
Okay. I don't know the difference between massive and significant.
Well, massively would be like 20% and above. Significantly would be like 10 to 20%.
Okay, so say Milton Williams gets shut out in the Super Bowl, no sack. Instead of a 4-year, $104 million contract, what does he get?
Minimum.
I think Milton was going to get paid regardless.
Yeah, but I still think it helped. I think what you do in a Super Bowl does make a difference. So maybe he would have gotten, a couple million a year less.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know if we're that far. Like, I think you might be right. I don't think it would have changed much. And there's no way to really know that. Like,
no, there's no way to know it. It's something I'm curious to ask Howie if I ever have the chance, what he thinks, because I'm sure he'd have a pretty good sense of that. But anyway, it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's also tricky too because like they're projecting it no matter what, and a lot of times the projections are off because the markets change, and sometimes you just see like some of the projections are just off, and there's no way to you try to predict it as best you can, but sometimes you don't really know. It's a fun thing to think about, like if those guys didn't, maybe Sweat. I think maybe it helps Sweat more than Milton.
Maybe.
I think when you have a 25-year-old defensive tackle who's coming off 4 years and not an older veteran who's not super old, but a guy who's been around a little bit longer, who has had some dips in his career, I think that's a little different.
Yeah, I would think it affected Sweat more. You just asked me about Milton, but yeah, it's fun to think about. Yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah, that's a fun hypothetical. I like that though. Let's come up with we'll come up with their contracts without the.
What would Jack Stahl have gotten from the Saints? He might. Well, he wasn't even here at the end of the year, but anyway, carry on.
We had a chance to talk to Kenyon Green and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Zoom calls, so not in person, but it was good to talk to those two guys. Kenyon Green, especially, well, both of them. I don't want to single him out, but Kenyon Green is the guy I think there's a little more intrigue about just because he was a first-round pick. You were on that. What'd you make of some of the things he had to say?
And the other part of it is, I mean, he has a chance to play for this team where Dorian Thompson-Robinson really doesn't, at least in any kind of significant role anytime soon. He was accountable. He was asked why things didn't work out. And he said, he said it was a lot of things, but it was me. He knows he has to be better. I mean, he just wasn't a good player down there. He said he thinks a change of scenery can't hurt. He spoke really highly of Stout, who he had met on his 30 visit. So he's aware of Mekhi Becton and his whole story, and said, maybe I can be I could be the same kind of thing. He was very aware of what Mekhi achieved this year after the way his career started with the Jets. So I like what I heard. He's a guy that obviously he was a great college player. Kind of reminds you a little of Chance Warmack. It was like a first team All-America college player. And got to the league and just, first round pick, got to the league and just.
Chance was what, 10th overall, and Green was 15th?
Yeah. Yeah. They're both top half of the first round. That's just
which is a lot to use on a guard, by the way. It's not like a ton of guards are going that high.
More lately, but but I like what he said. I like that he was accountable, and he said he was asked like if he's more comfortable on the right or the left. He said, "I just want to play. I just want to help this team any way I can. It doesn't matter where I play." So I liked what I heard. He said the right things. He didn't seem bitter. He thanked the Texans for drafting him and believing in him, and he said he's ready to get to work and try to prove that's not the player he is.
Yeah, man. So the left or right thing is important to note because he's only played left guard in the NFL. He did play a bunch of different positions in college, but in 22 and 24, the 2 years he's played in the NFL, it's been all left guard. So, I mean, I would imagine day one of OTAs, the Eagles are going to have him right guard. And I would think they're going to have Tyler Steen in there with the first team. And then my guess is he's the second team right guard, and you start him there and you let that competition play out.
Yeah, I think that's most likely, assuming Becton isn't back, which.
Yep. I mean, yeah, if he's back, obviously you don't have to worry about that. But
yeah, it's just I'm really surprised, and this is off topic, but I'm surprised he hasn't signed anywhere yet. I'm not sure what that means, if he misjudged his value. But in any case, the fact that he hasn't signed here or anywhere else tells me maybe he was wrong about his value and overvalued himself. But that's another story. But yeah, I think he's a young guy. He was a first round pick. I like his attitude. Again, I think there's not a great chance that it's going to pan out, but looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah, and Stout isn't batting 1,000, but you feel pretty good about it. It's going to come down to whether or not he wants to put in the work, whether he's able to respond to the coaching the way he needs to, because he is the type of player Stout loves. Just like he is a road grader at guard, and he even talked about his play style a little bit today. He wants to move people, and he does. I mean, that was the talk about him coming out of A&M, was that he's kind of a nasty physical type of player, especially in the run game. I think his pass protection still needs work, but there were flashes of that in Houston. Overall, the play wasn't good, but there were still flashes of that dominant road grader type blocker, and Stout loves that in a guard.
Yeah, I think they had that. Who was that kid? Pierce, was he the running back? Damian Pierce.
Yeah.
Who spoke highly of him. I read an interview from back then. The thing about Stoutland, Becton really responded to Stout's. He's a really tough coach, and he's gonna break guys down and start building them up. And not everybody responds to that in a positive way. And I think you need a special kind of inside toughness to put yourself through that and come out a better player. And Becton did. Becton really, he responded to it. He wanted it. He embraced it. And I don't know Kenyon Green well enough to know how that's going to go, but it doesn't work for everybody. And you've got to really, be honest with yourself and realize that you've got to change a lot of things about your game. If you do that and you're willing to put in the work and the extra time and the extra practice after practice is over and extra film study and all that stuff, technique work, if you're willing to do that, Stout, you have a chance to be a better player with Stout. But he's not for everybody, and we've seen that.
Yeah, he can be a lot. He's an intense guy.
He is. He is that.
I wanted to hit on Becton real quick because I don't mind going off on that tangent. I think it's a worthwhile tangent while we're talking about a guard here. Uh, Obviously, like him being out there makes it more likely that he's going to be back. We kind of joked about this because, well, if he signed somewhere, he's clearly not coming back. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I think he wants to be here, but I don't think the Eagles are going to be willing to pay him what he's worth. They're probably certainly not going to be able to pay him what he thinks he's worth.
Yeah,
if there's a disconnect there.
So far, but as those two numbers are going to just keep getting closer and closer. Like as the rest of the league, doesn't pay him what he wants, his asking price is going to come down.
Yeah, I don't know if it's ever going to meet though.
I don't either. But
so Kevin Zeitler, 35-year-old Kevin Zeitler, steady, good guard, been playing in the league a long time, got 1 year, $9 million. I think that's got to be the floor for Becton.
Yeah, I would think so.
I just can't imagine the Eagles doing that.
Yeah, I can't either.
So we're talking like a 1 year, $10 million contract for Becton versus you already have Tyler Steen in the building. Now you have Kenyon Green in the building. If it came down to a 1 year, $10 million deal for Becton versus you let these two guys battle it out for the right guard spot, I think that there would be a drop off, but I don't know if they're going to think the drop off is significant enough to not let it play out.
I think they might. I think if there's any way you can get Becton back on that kind of deal, I think Becton is significantly better than Tyler Steen. I think we might disagree on that.
I don't know if I disagree on that. I think I don't know if it's in perfect sync with what the pay difference is going to be, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think Becton at 10 mil on a 1 year deal is that much better than Steen. You know what I mean? I don't know if it correlates the same way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And like we've seen Steen play at a pretty high level at times. Haven't seen the consistency that you like to see. Well, and that's true to a lesser extent of Becton. I mean, he wasn't always perfect, certainly. So, I mean, just from that standpoint, and I think there's a big gap from Steen to Kenyon Green as well. I think if there's a competition there, Steen's going to win that. You don't know, but
I haven't seen Green.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just based on the way he played 2 years, his first 2 years. But I mean, at some point.
Yeah, but if you would have said, I saw Becton, Becton had some better moments, obviously. But if you said Becton's going to be the starting right guard, I don't know if you'd believe that.
Yeah. All right. Somebody's got to sign him, and we're 4 days in now. So he's going to play somewhere, and I'm just curious what his starting price was and how far it's come down so far. And what if it does come down under 10? What if it gets down to $7.5 million for 1 year? What if
it's a lot better than 10?
What if it keeps dropping?
I don't understand why it would. I have some theories on that. I think 1 year at a new position isn't enough, maybe, for some people in their evaluation.
Yeah.
I think there's another chance that people look at the situation in Philly and think, man, that was just so perfect for him to succeed with Stoutland between Cam Jurgens and Lane Johnson. He's not going to be able to duplicate that. And right or wrong, fair or not fair, I think that people are going to look at his time with the Jets and maybe wonder what's going to happen if you pay this guy like a multi-year deal. And I don't know the answer to that. I think that's unfair based on what I know of Mekhi Becton, but man, it was a rough go for him in New York, and he did develop a reputation.
No doubt about it. My guess is the middle thing. It's kind of like the Miles Sanders effect. You see what kind of player he is behind this offensive line, then you see what kind of player he is in Carolina. And so he's playing behind this line and Becton's playing on this line. But when you're playing with those four guys, and especially the center and the right tackle, I just think it helps you so much being an elite player. You're getting help from 2 Pro Bowl guys. You're working together with elite players. So I think there could be some questions about that. What's it going to look like when you get him out of that comfort zone, away from Stout, away from Lane and Cam and Jordan and Landon and all of that? I think that might be a big part of it.
Yeah, and we both agree that like they're a better team with Mekhi Becton. There's no
Yeah.
question about that. It's just whether or not the financial aspect of it lines up.
Yeah.
That was a fun tangent. I think that was a worthwhile tangent. I want to get back to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I think it's notable that both him and Kenyon Green had top 30 visits. I shouldn't say top 30, had 30 visits here to the NovaCare complex. Thompson-Robinson said it was one of his favorite teams in the pre-draft process. That stuff matters. It's like every time the Eagles interview someone, whether it's a coach or a player, they kind of file it away, and they've had such stability in the front office that you're able to kind of recall these things. Now, I think it does matter when it comes time to pull off a trade like this.
Yeah, there's no question about it. You just have that comfort level with someone. You know them. You've looked in their eye, and you know what kind of worker they've been.
Just one? Sorry.
Looking into both their eyes. I'm sorry. Just
when he got his head turned, he like a shark. He only got one.
They had Cyclops in for a 30 visit. So, but yeah, and there's a lot of value in that, and that's why and interviewing coaches, like they'll interview coaches. They have no intent of hiring, just to kind of get to know them a little bit, and maybe in a few years this is going to be the guy. We got that relationship already, so yeah, all that stuff is really, really important.
He already kind of knows Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
they've kind of run into each other, and this is a unique thing. Their shared chess coach, Seth Mikowski, it seems like DTR is really into chess. He used to play every day. And how's this for a full circle kind of story? Picked up chess from Chip Kelly.
Yeah, Chip suggested it, and he also made the connection between playing chess and playing quarterback. Just that you're, making quick decisions, trying to make smart decisions. You have some complicated decisions to make. Yeah, he spoke very highly of Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly was head coach here from 2013 to 2015. People might not know that.
I think they know that.
And he was Howie Roseman's successor and predecessor as general manager as well. So yeah, he spoke really highly of Chip, and which was interesting. But yeah, he's into chess. Everyone says everyone else is playing checkers, Howie's playing chess. This guy literally is playing chess.
You know who's going to love this press conference? Nick Sirianni.
Oh, yeah.
He's already talking about challenging Jalen Hurts to a chess match.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's something to get Nick excited, that's it, right? The newcomer talking about challenging the veteran quarterback to a game the minute he gets here.
And whoever wins is the opening day quarterback. Week 1.
They might want to make sure Jalen brushes up a little bit.
Make sure Jalen's playing white. Are you a chess player at all?
I'm not, so that reference went right over my head.
So my brother was a hardcore chess player.
What does that mean? Just like you're the white pieces?
Yeah, you just go first. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My brother would go to tournaments in New York when we were kids, and I guess teenagers and young teenagers, and I would go with him and just to watch. And like you'd walk in the room and there was like 1,000 tables with chess sets and like 2,000 people with giant brains playing chess. And it was an interesting scene, as you might imagine. But yeah, he was really into it. Like he had a national ranking, and you would, as you won tournaments or games or matches, I guess they're called, your ranking would go up more if you beat somebody with a higher ranking.
I have a dumb question.
Yeah. I'm used to it.
So I watched like movies where there's chess, or you see TV shows and they have the little, like they make the move and they hit the clock.
Yeah.
What's the clock for?
Well, you have X amount of minutes to make all your moves. So, yeah, you have to.
So it's like a combined time that you have?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. What's that movie with that girl, that chess prodigy? It's actually a really good movie, and I
I don't
can't
know. I
think of the
saw
name.
the like the short series thing on like Netflix.
See, I'm gonna have to look this up because there's a movie I'm gonna recommend to you. I'm sure DTR has seen it. Um, uh, Queen's Gambit. I guess that is a Netflix.
Yeah, that was like that was a series, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I did see that. It was good.
Beth Harmon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty realistic from my experience. Um, yeah, it was cool. I don't know. I thought it was a movie, but yeah. So anyway, that was a cool aside. That's not what I expected to be hearing on the Zoom call. He's an interesting guy, very very um, interesting mind, thoughtful.
Yeah.
Not look, he was not very good in Cleveland, but who is?
Yeah, I mean, I almost throw that right out the window.
Yeah,
I mean, how do you even go about evaluating that? Like, that was a terrible situation for him to be in, and he's not like in a great situation to play here. He's going to be behind Jalen Hurts and presumably behind Tanner McKee. So, but you develop him, and there was something to really like about him a few years ago, and the Eagles had him in for a reason. They were interested for a reason.
yeah. I think in Cleveland. I think he played before he was ready. I remember seeing him in a couple games, and he's not ready for this. It was clear, but that's what you get when you go to the Browns. I mean, they haven't had. When was the last good quarterback they had? Was it Kosar? Like it might have been Bernie Kosar, right?
It depends on what your definition of good is.
Good, a good
Yeah.
quarterback.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So I think this is a good situation for him. He's gonna be the 3.
I mean,
and
Baker was solid.
he was okay. He had good commercials.
I love that commercial with him living in the stadium.
Great.
That was the worst part about him leaving Cleveland.
I know. That's the first thing I thought of when it happened. I'm gonna miss those commercials. Yeah. That was one of my
Aside from
favorite.
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say my other favorite commercial is when the it comes in the house and she's like going through the fridge and saying expired, expired, expired. Like Aunt Joni's here. Yeah, I don't even know. It's for some insurance company.
I don't know that one.
It's not a successful commercial since I can't tell you what insurance company it's for. It's very funny though.
People always say that, but subliminally you might know it. Like next time you're going to get insurance, you're like, I'll go to this company because it like gets kind of in
I
your
took
head.
an advertising class in college. It was part of my journalism major. I don't think they even have journalism majors anymore, but we actually went to an ad agency up in Newark, Ohio. Newark. It's pronounced Newark in Delaware. Ant infestations. It's Geico, according to Ben Berry. Thanks, Ben. It's pronounced Newark in Jersey, Newark in Delaware, and it's Newark in Ohio. But yeah, that was one of the things about like, don't try to be super funny or creative. Just hammer your brand so people know what they're getting. But I'm way off the rails here.
Yeah, back to DTR. He did talk about, aside from the chess aspect of
He
it,
just ignores me and goes right back to DTR.
wanting to learn from Jalen. And I asked him how he's going to approach that, because I think it's like, I don't think you want to look over eager as a new guy, but he said he wants to ask every question he can, like nothing too big, nothing too small. I think that's good. And I think being around a stable quarterback and a stable franchise will be good for his development.
Yeah, and he said he's known Tanner for quite a while. I guess they were in the same recruiting class coming out of high school.
Yeah.
So that's good. And it's kind of an interesting comparison. I mean, Tanner McKee didn't play until he was ready, and you could see that this kid played before he was ready, and that can set a quarterback back a lot.
Yeah, and DTR could be the backup at some point when Tanner leaves on $100 million contract to be the starter somewhere else.
But that $100 million contract would have been about $85 million if you didn't have such a great Super Bowl.
Holding that clipboard. All right, let's take a break. We have some questions on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and NissanUSA.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast. We're presented by Nissan, Reuben Frank, and Dave Zangaro. I want to hit you guys with this before we get to questions. I always save it to the end, but we've been doing a lot of these podcasts this week, and if you guys appreciate that, we'd appreciate it if you would go ahead and rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll give you a second. We'll wait. Go ahead and click the like button, follow, subscribe there as well. We'll wait. Give it a second. You did it? All right, thanks. Let's get the questions, Rube. We have a bunch of them in the inbox. It's Eagle Eye at NBC Uni. That's NBCUNI.com. The QR code is on the screen. We'll leave it up there if you're watching YouTube. The first one is from Josh. Hey, Reuben, Dave, huge fan of the podcast. Never miss an episode. Keep up the great work. Do Howie's moves this offseason show more confidence in the position coaches and coordinators in coaching up young players to get them ready for Sundays? This year, it seems like a lot of the young players, especially on defense, made good progress, and it seems like the expectation is for that to continue with guys like Trotter, Ringo, Ojima, and others. I understand letting veteran, more expensive players go and then expecting/needing younger, cheaper guys to step up. However, it doesn't seem like the prior off seasons have gone quite like this one. Obviously, it's early and a lot can change before the start of the season, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
Well, it's quite a long question. I don't think there's any question that they really like this staff. I think it's a very good teaching staff. We've seen that. And I think this is exactly the kind of staff you want if you're in this situation and you got to start relying on the Keely Ringos and Jeremiah Trotter Juniors and Sidney Browns. I think it's a great fit. And I think those guys really do have a chance of getting a lot better because of guys like, Wash and Christian Parker and Aaron Moorhead. I think we've seen young guys just get better, and that's not always the case. I think it's a good situation.
Yeah, I think it's mostly on defense when we're talking about it this year. That just happens to be like where most of their younger developmental players are needing to play. But I wrote about this actually on NBC Sports Philadelphia.com for Thursday, that you look back to the last time they came off a Super Bowl and they had a new staff. And that year we both agreed like they probably should have played younger players more. But I don't know if they had the staff in place to develop those players then. If you remember, 2023 was after Jonathan Gannon left. So Gannon leaves, you're late in the process. Fangio had already been hired by Miami. He wasn't going to back out. So you ended up with Sean Desai, who then gets demoted in week 14 for Matt Patricia. The defense is in shambles. Jonathan Gannon takes Nick Rawlis with him to Arizona. They hired DJ Elliott after a pretty exhaustive search, but they hired a guy from Temple who hadn't never really coached at the NFL level. And then Denard Wilson left after he got passed over for the job, and they just simply promoted DK McDonald, who just didn't seem ready for that gig. This is a much more veteran staff, and we've seen them already coach up young players and develop them last year.
Yeah, that's a really good synopsis of what just the whole sequence and what Gannon's departure kind of led to after that 22 season. And Nick had spoken so highly of DK. So we didn't know until the season began, but yeah, I think there's no question this staff is far more equipped. And some of those guys are good coaches and they probably just needed more time and experience, but this is a savvy, veteran, knowledgeable, experienced staff that I think is perfect for these young guys.
Yeah, you look at every level of this defensive staff, and you start with Vic Fangio. Then you have Clint Hurt at the interior defensive line, Jeremiah Washburn on the edges, Bobby King at linebacker, Christian Parker, Roy Anderson, and Joe Casper. All of them proved themselves to me. Not that they had to prove it to me, but they proved themselves in 2024 because every young player they played got better as the season went on.
Yeah, and it's a big reason they won the thing.
Yeah. Next question from Mike kind of falls in line with this. Happy post Super Bowl offseason, fellas. Been a fan for years, but you guys have taken over the number one spot as my go-to Eagles podcast. Always great insight and a lot of laughs. Watching the Birds D-line all year, I've seen nothing but maturity and ascension from guys like Nolan Smith, Milton Williams, Jalix Hunt, Moro Ojima. Jalen Carter is a freak, but his technique and approach seems much improved. Carter took his instructions to get in great shape to heart and came in ready to dominate. Huge upgrades in the coaching staff were a key to the success this season. I think Clint Hurt is an underrated part of that. How much credit do you give Hurt for I like that he calls him Mr. Hurt, because I might call him that too from now on. Mr. Hurt, for the swift improvement of these young guys. And where do you see him as the future Fangio replacement compared to the young star Christian Parker, another great offseason hire?
Well, we're really getting ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I was very impressed with Clint Hurt, and glad I got a chance to sit and talk to him in New Orleans at some of those one of the availables. I had a chance to talk to him. Yeah, I mean, Milton should give him a big chunk of that check, because he took him to another. Milton was a good player, but yeah, he made a huge difference, really, for all those guys.
And Hurt getting Carter to that level helped Milton get to that
That's
level.
a good point. Yeah. I mean, he's going to end up, Jalen Carter's going to end up with a monster contract, in part because of Clint Hurt. That was a hell of a hire.
Yeah. And he is someone who has defensive coordinator in his background. He was the DC briefly in Seattle. It is a question that's like getting ahead of ourselves, but Vic's not going to coach forever.
Yes, he is.
Maybe he will. Yeah. I think at some point Vic will want to hang him up and just watch the Phillies every chance he gets.
And hang out at the Palladium every night.
I think Christian Parker to me would be the top candidate to be like the heir apparent. But yeah, Hurt is certainly, the fact that he's done it and he has been successful makes sense there. I think Parker, at a certain point, if they can't promote him, he's going to leave to take a promotion.
Well, that's the other thing. Is like, if Vic stays a couple more years, they're going to start losing other coaches to coordinators. So
yeah, the Saints are already sniffing around Parker this offseason.
Yeah. So, but Vic might decide this is it this coming year, and you can elevate Parker, but you would hate to lose him, certainly.
Yeah. Next question here is from Shane. What's up, guys? I know Rube doesn't care for it, so this is for you, Dave. With all these good numbers becoming available, who do you think needs a number change? I think Jahan Dotson should get number 2. Yeah, there have been some elite numbers getting available here. You have Slay leaving. He was number 2. CJ Carter-Johnson was 8. 19 is not elite. That was a weird choice. 93 is a good one for these defensive linemen. I think that's a number that I think will be coveted. Maybe one of a new guy. Maybe they draft. That'd be a great, like, if they draft a defensive tackle in the first or second round, to get 93 when you walk in the door would be pretty good. At number 2, what do you think about like an AJ Dillon getting number 2, just a giant guy in number 2? That's almost as fun as a little shifty receiver like Jahan Dotson getting number 2. But you're right, elite numbers, and they're available. Rube, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said.
We got you back.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, next question is from Andrew. Hey, Dave and Rube, loving the offseason content. Thank you as always. The Eagles social media team announced Ben Van Sumeren as a fullback for his signing today. Sometimes a social media team and a website have players' positions wrong, but if they are correct, does this mean BVS is only a fullback and a special teamer now? Given the loss of Oren Burks and N'Kobe's injury, I figured BVS might see some reps behind Trotter at linebacker.
Yeah, it's a great question, because I don't know if that's coming from the coaching staff or if that's just an intern in the social media department looking at last year's.
I doubt that. I think that was purposeful.
Probably. I like him as a linebacker. We talked about this the other day. I think he has more of a chance to really affect the game as a linebacker, but obviously that means somebody would have to get hurt. Who knows? Maybe, if N'Kobe's not playing, Oren Burks isn't here, maybe he'd be in the mix to start until N'Kobe's healthy. So I like what I saw from him. at linebacker before his position change. As a fullback, he's not going to be more than 3 or 4 snaps a game. You can't do both. So it'll be interesting to see once we get to OTAs, we'll see where they line him up, assuming he's cleared by then.
Now, he is going to change numbers.
Right.
So this is actually a legitimate number conversation. This is not an aesthetic thing.
Right.
So you don't have to walk away this time. He plans on changing numbers this year because 57 is not an eligible receiver number. So he had to report every single time he went in the game. He wants to change that. He will change that this year. He already told me that at cleanout day. So maybe that's the reason behind. He's going to have a fullback number that they'll call him a fullback, but he's got to be like, he's got to spend his time somewhere. And I'd imagine if he's a full-time fullback, he's going to, like, position group meetings, he's going to be with the tight ends.
Yeah, I would think so. But if you're a linebacker with a fullback number, you don't have to report anything. You just go play linebacker. So
exactly.
It'll be interesting to see. I don't think he's a linebacker, but I could be wrong.
You said you still think he's a linebacker?
I still think of him as a linebacker.
I do too. I like his athleticism at the position. I think he's a big hitter. We've seen that on special teams. I think he has more of like a linebacker build than a fullback build, if that makes sense.
It's fair.
And that's just like an aesthetic thing. But in my head, I'm thinking like a 1990s fullback. So it's probably a little different. But I'm intrigued to see him like really step into this fullback role. And it's telling that they're giving him a chance to do this. They brought in a real fullback last year, a guy who had been doing it for years. So
last game. Yeah. So we'll see. It's just another thing to look for when we're out in OTAs in just a very few weeks.
Blasting. Oh gosh, that's true. Blasting Game told me there's like a fullback community. They all kind of know each other. Do you think BVS will be welcomed into that community, or do you think he'll be shunned?
Oh, well, I think the number change will help him get accepted.
Yeah,
by that group. But I think the minute he takes a practice rep at linebacker, he's out.
Okay. Maybe that's the reason for it. He's like, I got to get into this group text.
Could be.
All right. We'll take one more question.
Let's do it.
I work for you. This one's from Joe. Hey, Dave and Reuben. Love the pod. You guys do great work and help all Eagles fans get through the work week. First time trying to get a question in. My question is, who are your guys' favorite non-Eagles players? I always loved Eric Decker, J.J. Watt, Luke Kuechly, Terrell Suggs, and unfortunately rival Landon Collins. Thank you for everything you guys do. Just in terms of like which guys you like to watch.
Interesting question. I think Daniel Jones would be at the top of the list. Lamar Jackson, I love watching him play, and he's kind of come up small in some big games, but he's just never know what's going to happen with him. He's one of them. There's some old timers. I don't know. Is he talking about active players?
I don't think so.
I always loved Steve Atwater. Broncos safety. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Should be.
My safety was Troy Polamalu, which was a weird time because obviously I grew up in this area and I was an Eagles fan as a kid. So I was a big Dawkins fan, but I loved watching Polamalu play.
Yeah, he was a great one. Sam Mills is another one, a guy that Vic coached with the Stars.
Yeah. For me, it's not even about like good players. It's about like players who are just different, players who are fun to watch. One guy I always loved watching, and then it was cool when he actually came to Philadelphia for a year, was Michael Bennett. Just because he like played the game differently than anyone else I'd ever seen.
Mm-hmm. And he was different in the locker room than anyone else I've ever seen.
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
It's a shame that you never got to write your Michael Bennett's playlist story.
Yeah, I don't know. Have I ever mentioned that on the pod? I probably have. But Bennett would take over the stereo in the locker room every day. And he just had like really eclectic music taste. It was kind of all over the place in the best way possible. You never knew what was coming next. And it would be fun because I'd be in the locker room and he'd play something. And sometimes I would know it and sometimes I wouldn't. If I didn't know it, I would Shazam real quick. And I had like a running list of all the stuff. And my plan was to talk to him about music and his taste. And then the season kind of got away from them a little bit. And he wasn't quite fitting into the building as well as they had hoped. So the story I never got to do, but somewhere I still have a Michael Bennett locker room playlist.
I think you should run that in your next notes column if you can find it.
I think I might be able to find it.
I'd want to see that.
Okay. I think it's on Spotify. I think it's like a Spotify playlist. I would leave the locker room and then add it the next day.
I think you should do that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I will. All right. If you have a question for us, it's eagle-eye at NBC Uni. That's NBCUNI.com. One more time, I will ask you guys, if you like the podcast, if you appreciate all the pods we've done recently, please rate and subscribe to the pod. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the like button, subscribe there as well. Rube, any final words?
Yeah, I was at CVS today. I told Dave this story earlier. I was at CVS and this guy came up to me and he's like, hey, I just think you guys do a great job. I love the podcast. I love watching you on the post-game show. You're the best. And I'm feeling pretty good about myself at this point. And then he walks away and he comes back and he goes, what's your name again? That was a little humbling.
I
told him Dave Zangaro. He believed me.
And he said, I'm Dave Zangaro, you jerk. Yell at him. I get Dave Spadaro a lot, which I do understand because the names are similar and we both are around the Eagles a lot.
Yeah, but the similarities really end there.
No comment. All right, want to wrap this one up?
He was a hell of a beat writer back when he was at the Westchester Daily Local. He was really, really good beat writer. I mean, he was like, he didn't work for the team yet, and he was working for the Westchester News. I don't even know if the Westchester Daily Local still exists, but he did a really good job. He was in that first group when I started out.
Very cool. All right, let's wrap this one up. This is our Thursday pod, so we're sticking to the Tuesday, Thursday schedule. But if there's news, we'll be here and we'll be talking about it. Thanks for listening all week. For Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.